And joining us on the line right now, Susan Ferrecio, Chief Congressional Correspondent for the Washington Examiner. Good morning to you, Susan.
Good morning, guys.
All right, so the Patriot Act has lapsed, and it's sort of up in the air exactly how this is all going to be resolved. So tell me exactly what is going to happen now. The Senate has taken up the House measure, but the House measure doesn't have some things that Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, wanted in the bill. So where are we right now?
So today they're going to vote on this USA Freedom Act, as you say, which would now revive part of the Patriot Act that allows types of government surveillance to thwart domestic terrorist attacks. They're going to take it up in the Senate, but they're also going to take up a trio of amendments that would change the legislation and make it a little bit tougher. And when I say tougher, I mean it would make it more tougher for the NSA to be able to track calls and things, and instead of having it be a little bit too soft, which is what McConnell was worried about. There's a lot of lawmakers who feel like this USA Freedom Act essentially would gut the NSA surveillance program in a way that would make it too difficult for them to stop and track potential terrorist threats in the country. And so they're going to take up those amendments today, and if they pass, that will change the legislation. And that means that the House will then have to take it up again and decide whether they like it in its new form.
Now, part of the reason that it lapsed is because Rand Paul had some problems with it, and he stood his ground, and it lapsed, and time ran out. Is he going to continue to be sort of an impediment to passage of this legislation?
Well, what happened with Rand Paul is he decided that he would use procedural delays, and that did cause the law to lapse. He can't block it forever, though, so the time has run out on that. Therefore, they'll vote on it today. He tried to shape even the final outcome by introducing 8 amendments to the USA Freedom Act. But in order for his amendments to be allowed, it requires consent of every senator, all 100 senators. And, of course, he wasn't going to get that. And as we expected, McConnell objected to his amendments, and therefore they won't be debated or voted on. But, I mean, this will not be the last we hear of Rand Paul complaining about the surveillance law, because it's become a central point of his campaign. He's used it to fundraise. He's used it to gain attention and pick up, people who might want to vote for him. So he's not going to be done talking about this. However, once it's over in the House, there's not a lot legislatively that Rand Paul can do to shape the outcome. I will say, though, that over on the House side, they don't much like these amendments because they're siding more with Rand Paul. They think they like their USA Freedom Act the way it is, and they don't want to add more things. These amendments that McConnell would like to see attached to the bill would simply extend the transition period from the old way of doing things, where the government collects your information, to the new way, where they would have to get it from the telecommunications companies. And they'd extend that time from 6 months to 1 year. And it would also require them, the telecommunications companies, to give advance notice to the government if they were going to change the way they store and collect data from their customers. So there's reasons why that the House doesn't like this. And just yesterday, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee said he did not believe that the amended version from the Senate would be accepted in the House. So that's setting up, potentially big standoff between the two chambers, both run by Republicans.
Then it goes to a conference, and you're saying that the House is more aligned with Rand Paul's position.
The House is definitely more aligned with Rand Paul.
Right.
Well, however, Rand Paul wants the whole bill to lapse.
Yeah.
But USA Freedom Act would just make these reforms, and they feel like the McConnell amendments would backtrack on those reforms.
Susan Ferrecio, it's pretty remarkable to me that the Senate is, turning themselves inside out over the provisions of this NSA data collection that a federal judge and an appeals court has already said violates the Constitution and has never actually been proven to have stopped any terror attacks. But meanwhile, yesterday we found out that 95% of the attempts to smuggle a weapon or a bomb through TSA airport screeners were effective, and the tests were allowed. They were able to smuggle a bomb and weapon through. Is anyone in Congress actually concerned about Homeland Security, and are they going to be taking up that issue that all of America is talking about this morning?
Absolutely. I think you're going to see hearings on this and discussions about the competency. I mean, let's face it, the TSA, the questions about their competency has been, nonstop on Capitol Hill almost since the inception of the TSA. And yes, there are huge concerns in Congress about this. Now, for the NSA, when you say, none of this information helped, that's not fully agreed on. There are a lot of people who, if you ask John McCain, if you ask others on Capitol Hill, they feel that there's a lot of classified information that we don't have.
Susan, I only make that statement because under the protection of a federal lawsuit and an appeal where confidentiality and anonymity would have been protected for national security purposes, the NSA failed to make the case to those judges that they had stopped any attacks. That's why I made that claim.
Yeah, no,
I know what senators say on the floor of the Senate or during a hearing.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and that's part of the reason why the House passed the USA Freedom Act 338 votes, which is overwhelming bipartisanship in the House, where people almost never get along. So that is true. And in the Senate, there was also a lot of support. That's why Mitch McConnell, when he attempted to extend the law in its current form, had no chance at all. So you're right, Larry. There's this overwhelming belief that this bulk data collection may not be necessary or helpful.
All right, so look, yesterday we saw a member of the Senate make an announcement. He's joining a whole host of people who think they should be president of the United States. Here's Lindsey Graham.
I'm pretty sure no one here, including me, ever expected to hear me say, I'm Lindsey Graham, and I'm running for president of the United States.
So he joins a long list of members of the Senate. Let me see if I've got this right. It's Rand Paul, it's Ted Cruz, it's Marco Rubio, it's Bernie Sanders, and now Lindsey Graham, all running for the office of the presidency from their positions in the United States Senate. I've always found that when people in the Senate start to run for the office of the presidency, it just bollocks things up incredibly. Is that your take on it as well?
Well, I think it's one of the reasons why the Senate was in session on Sunday. Rand Paul is running for president, and I think if he wasn't running for president, he would probably disagree with me, but that he might not have held up the NSA bill, because the law lasts, but it's only going to last for, arguably for a few days. But it was to make a point that he could make this law go away, at least temporarily, and achieve that kind of libertarian or populist victory for himself as a candidate. And there are a lot of, there's a lot of sentiment in the Senate that that's what he was doing. There are people who aren't happy with him over it because they feel like the lapse in the law is a dangerous thing. And so, yes, and then you have Bernie Sanders. Clearly, his platform on taxes, et cetera, it all sounds very much like he's trying to steer the Democratic primary to the left. And he has actually accomplished that, because if you listen to Hillary Clinton talk, she sounds a lot more liberal than she did, last year. Mm-hmm. So, you get the sense that they are having an impact, but you do see it in the halls of Congress, too. I think Rand Paul is probably the strongest example of how that can really kind of change what happens on the floor.
All right.
And with legislation.
Susan, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys.